Welcome back to Ben and Matt's Marvellous Journey. We are on episode 3 already, which means it's time to talk about Iron Man 2. It's right, we are 3 films in. The MCU has existed for 2 years and we already have a sequel, so hey ho. My name is Matt Waters, I'm your faithful host. I do all the hosting in the real world because I'm the only one who has his shit together enough to write things down. I am joined by the genius mind of Ben Phillips, who can just off the top of the dome rant about comics. Ben, how are you this evening?
I am good. I have braved Oxford Street at Christmas time to date this episode.
Yeah, also that plays well internationally. Imagine trying to shop in, Times Square.
Oxford Street is a well-known international location.
I hope so, for your sake. So it's Iron Man 2. Released May 7th, 2010, which makes it 2 years since the last Marvel film.
We skipped over 2009 for a Marvel movie.
Yeah, they released Iron Man and Hulk almost back to back, and then left it a year, and then came back with Iron Man 2. In the time since then, The Dark Knight, Watchmen, and X-Men Origins Wolverine have all come out. So, quite a scale there to play with. Also,
one of them is good.
Yes. Also The Losers, but I mean, some people don't even know that's a comic book movie, including Matt until 2 years ago. So yes, we have had quite a high standard of comic book movie exist now. I feel around this time people are basically talking about Iron Man and they're talking about The Dark Knight and everything else is trash. Let's do a sequel to Iron Man then. They made it on a budget of $200 million, which is significantly up from the 140 from the first one and 150 from Incredible Hulk. Much more, CGI this time, lots of Iron Man copies, all of that. Bigger cast, bigger sets, more action, noisier. It made $624 million, which is more than the first one, and not quite triple Hulk, but I feel this is sequel effect where Iron Man 1 came out, huge success, word of mouth, DVD sales, everyone's then like, I'm going to go see Iron Man 2, because it's not going to take us an hour of podcasting to determine that public opinion is lower on Iron Man 2 than it is on Iron Man 1, but hey. Jon Favreau is back. It is the first film he directed since Iron Man. He did a lot of acting in between in some bad comedy movies. It is his last time directing a Marvel movie as well. He gets a producer credit on the Avengers, I believe. I'm sure he has a producer credit on Iron Man 3. I don't know that off the top of my head, but I would imagine he does. Written by Ben Phillips' Bay, Justin Theroux, who, fresh off writing Tropic Thunder, which got him the recommendation for this gig, because who's in Tropic Thunder? Well, Robert Downey Jr. is. The first film, as we covered before, is, sort of written by a committee and, almost all of the dialogue is improvised. This one actually written as a script, for better or worse. It's 125 minutes, basically the same length as Iron Man 1. Far shorter than the DC films I mentioned, which are forever long.
It's longer than Iron Man 1, though.
By 1 minute.
No, it feels longer.
Oh, it feels it. Sorry, yeah. Yeah, it does feel longer. It does. Favreau always wanted to do a trilogy. He wanted to save Jeff Bridges' sort of turn to the dark side to the second film, but they pushed it. They brought it forward because they decided Mandarin was hard to do. Shane Black had some consultation on the script. He will, of course, be the writer and director of Iron Man 3. He also helped with dialogue in Iron Man 1. He suggested some key storylines. Favreau and Downey came up with the story, and then Justin Theroux came on and wrote it. I mean, it's a pretty uneventful production, aside from the very ugly public dumping of Terrence Howard, recasting him with Don Cheadle, which I guess we will get to later. And, I just think it's interesting that they thought they'd strike while the iron's hot and go straight back to a success, rather than debut all of their characters, although it is the only sequel of Phase 1. So, Ben, it's quite difficult to talk about, whenever we get to a new superhero, I like to have you give us a sort of rundown on the history of the character, the sort of impact it has on you, how I feel about them. We kind of did that with Iron Man 1, but I figured instead what we'd do is say what kind of an impact Iron Man had on comics, like the opposite way. So, after Iron Man 1 comes out, what happens to Tony Stark in the comics?
I mean, it's one of those things where since Iron Man's come out, before Iron Man came out, we were actually just finishing up Civil War in the comics, which, if you don't know, is the story in which Captain America and Iron Man have a difference of opinion on whether or not superheroes should be registered.
They should not.
Iron Man comes off very badly in this story. He locks up people who don't register, and they go into a prison, and people die. He's a Thor robot at one point, because Thor is dead in the comics when Civil War's happening.
Comics, yo.
Yeah. So at the end of Civil War, Iron Man is kind of the villain of the Marvel Universe. In fact, he leads on to Norman Osborn being able to become the leader of the Avengers.
A dark period.
A dark reign, some would say. But yeah, so basically, Iron Man came out in kind of like the year plus following Civil War ending, and it was kind of up to Matt Fraction and Steve LaRocca, who were writing and drawing the Iron Man comic at the time, to rehabilitate Tony, which basically involves resetting his brain to a point 10 years prior, so he hasn't actually done any of the things that he did over the course of Civil War to kind of like wash your hands of what he did.
That's a gross thing they did.
Yeah, and then from there, they basically just start to slowly turn Tony more and more into Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah, I mean, you flip open a comic book with Iron Man in it from the last few years, they're just drawing Robert Downey Jr. now, in the same way that like Professor X started to look more like Patrick Stewart, etc.
I think literally when you get to like a few years later, there is literally an artist who is just taking videos of Robert Downey Jr. and tracing over them to put in the comic.
I mean, it must have sped up the art. I don't know.
I will not name the artist, but they are not very well regarded.
Okay.
They draw a lot of comics, though.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so obviously Iron Man is going to be positioned over the years to be, far more prominent than he ever has been. I mean, I guess Civil War gave him that role as well, because he was sort of, one of the top two characters in that. But the idea of Iron Man, front and centre, leader of the Avengers, leader of all events, that very much, to me anyway, felt like a reaction to the movie Iron Man being such a success.
Yeah, I mean, at this point in the comics as well, the core three Marvel heroes of like Iron Man, Captain America, Thor aren't even on the Avengers at this point. Iron Man's the only one who is, and it's kind of a very tenuous, kind of almost villain turn at this point of being in charge of the Avengers and stuff like that. And it's not until the Avengers come out that all three of those characters are actually back on the Avengers together, and you start to see even more of this kind of cross-pollination between movie and film and comic book.
Indeed. Right, so Iron Man 2. Plot time. I had to Google this because I wasn't sure, because at times they make references to things, and I'm like, when is this set? It is set before The Incredible Hulk and Thor, because Nick Fury makes some references to stuff in the Southwest, which I assume to be Hulk. So, in the 6 months since declaring to the world, I am Iron Man, Tony claims to have successfully privatized world peace, and he repeatedly defies government pressure to share or outright turn over his tech to the army, to the air force, to the government. And he remains adamant nobody else can replicate his technology, especially his business rival, the dreamy Justin Hammer. Right on cue, Ivan Vanko, whose father invented the first version of the arc reactor along with Tony's father. He creates his own miniaturized one exactly like Tony's, and he uses it to create a pair of like electrocharged whips, because he's Whiplash. They talk about like how he's got a suit, and it's like he doesn't have a suit, he has a pair of whips. Anyway, he attacks Tony in Monaco and almost kills him, but is captured. Justin Hammer, who's been humiliated by Tony throughout the film, he arranges for Vanko to be broken out of prison and brings him on board to create a sort of fleet of knockoff Iron Man suits, which he's going to get a big fat government contract for. Vanko agrees, but he just ignores everything Justin Hammer says, and he makes a series of drones that only are loyal to him, so he can kill Tony Stark with them. Tony, meanwhile, has been suffering from declining health due to excessive use of the Iron Man suit. He's got palladium poisoning from his arc reactor, and he just starts getting very drunk. And he causes a scene while wearing his armour at his birthday party, which causes Rhodey to put on the original prototype suit that he has to try and restrain him, and then Rhodey takes the suit and hands it over to the military, and they hire Justin Hammer, who kits it out with crazy amounts of guns. Nick Fury sort of intervened, and Stark's sort of downward spiral gives him some of his father's old research material and stuff, and it allows Tony to rediscover and invent a new element that magically fixes all of his problems so that he can have an arc reactor without, being poisoned. And then during Justin Hammer's big presentation of his drones, and the new War Machine suit, Vanko tells the drones to kill everyone, especially Tony Stark. And Tony and War Machine team up, kill everyone. Not everyone, just the drones, obviously. And the film ends with Fury telling Stark that S.H.I.E.L.D. have rejected him for the Avengers, and he will only be a consultant. And Agent Coulson arrives in New Mexico, where there's a big old hammer in the middle of a crater, teasing episode 4 of this podcast. Yeah, there's certainly a lot more going on than in Iron Man 1, which you can sum up with, he's taken captive and he builds the Iron Man suit, and then he keeps tinkering with it, becomes Iron Man, fights Stain, and that's basically the entirety of Iron Man 1. Public perception of this film is not good. It will forever be marked against Iron Man 1 because people loved Iron Man 1 so much because it was sort of fresh, and it's like, here's a guy who revels in being a superhero and is just having fun. And this will obviously never be as original, so I think it does get a sort of... It's not that I think it's amazing, it's just I think it does get a little bit more knocked than it should, just because it's held up against the first one. What are your sort of big picture thoughts on Iron Man 2?
It's one of those weird movies where, you feel that there's more urgency to kind of, the start of the movie, and kind of, they've got all this confidence built from, kind of what they built in that first movie, and then about a third, halfway through, just all the momentum falls away from the movie, and it's really weird because they've got all these really charismatic actors doing all this stuff, but halfway through it's just they feel the urge to just kind of start setting up Avengers in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's
just well, we had Samuel L. Jackson in this cameo in the first movie, we need to have more of him in this one, so they give him more to do, and we're it's fine, but it never feels plot relevant in any way that's actually important, because basically he's just there to say your dad was working on something.
Yeah.
Maybe go have some digging around and stuff like that, and then you get half an hour of him making an element essentially.
Yeah, I think it's from when Vanko attacks him, it's sort of after that scene is over, it's all of the air comes out of the film in a way, and it's just quite plodding for a while. I
wouldn't say it's then. I'd probably say it's more from the scene where Tony sat in the donut.
Okay, I mean, yeah, that's when it's particularly pronounced. But
yeah, it's just that scene of the donut is the part where whenever I rewatch it, I'm always sat there going and then the scene from the donut is kind of where we're going to slam on the brakes and kind of we're not going to have any fun really until the final act, and even then, fun is in quotation marks.
Yeah. That is one of the images that comes immediately to mind. It's him sitting in that donut in his Iron Man costume. It's ugh. I don't know. I think in some ways it's a more ambitious movie than the first one. In some ways.
Totally.
We criticised how Tony has the tiniest arc in the world and all the characters have nothing. There are far more journeys here and far more themes and narrative ideas. So in some ways I would place it above Iron Man 1. It's just Iron Man 1 has that unbridled fun factor.
It's got that kind of the energy of improv.
Yeah.
There's no. We know what the aim of the scene is going to be, but we're just going to have fun whilst we do it. Whereas this one feels the scenes don't have as much room to breathe.
Yeah, and they give you a couple of those scenes here and there, and they don't have quite the punch. But stuff like Tony and Pepper bickering about art, and then he promotes her to CEO. It's okay, that's kind of fun. But then the rest doesn't have as much energy as that.
Yeah, it's. Cause I remember watching this in the cinema and thinking, I'm having a lot of fun with this, and kind of just kind of switching off and stuff like that. But the more I thought about it as I kind of left, you kind of realise it's so much less substantial. Basically, from the second half, there's very few moments where I'm kind of thinking, oh, this was really cool. The things that are there to sustain, more conversation about the in between this movie and Thor coming out are oh, but he grabbed Cap's shield and the post-credit scene with Coulson in New Mexico and stuff like that, but you're not really discussing where Tony was left at the end of the movie, what we think for the future and stuff like that. And it's just Whereas like Iron Man leaves you with that, like even if you don't enjoy the third act of Iron Man, it still leaves you with that kind of like pronouncement of I am Iron Man, and you kind of go like, where the hell are they going to go with this? This is.
Well, I almost consider that separate to the third act. When I talk about how bad the third act is, I'm talking about the big fight with Stain and everything. That final scene of I am Iron Man, that's tremendous. I just wish what came before it for about 20 minutes or so was better, but I'd say this one, it kind of just, it adds a lot of pieces to the board, and it reacts to Iron Man 1. It just doesn't necessarily leave Tony specifically in a place of like, ooh, what next?
To move on to character, do you think Robert Downey Jr. kind of like misses a step with this one?
it's not. I think he's trying a lot harder, but he still like is electric when he's like fully on. It's just it seems like he's trying to replicate what he did the first time around and not quite there. If we're talking about, you know, we like to talk about our outstanding performances in each film or whatever, and, you know, we determined there wasn't one in Incredible Hulk. You know, and we have discussed off air about, you know, whether if Robert Downey Jr. is really good in another film, do we put him up against himself? I think Iron Man 1 Tony beats Iron Man 2 Tony, to the point that I probably wouldn't put Robert Downey Jr. forward for this version. It's just like more of the same. He amps up the cockiness right at the beginning.
Yeah, I really enjoy the kind of court scene. The court scene is, for me, one of my favourite parts of Iron Man 2. But then also...
It's so obnoxious.
Yeah, but part of the reason why I love that courtroom scene is because of who he's playing off in that scene.
Yeah.
Because you have kind of Don Cheadle reacting to Tony, which is good fun, and a nice kind of like smooth introduction for him. But then you also have Gary Shandling and Sam Rockwell,
who we will talk about both of those people. Like I think a huge part of this film is the aftermath of saying I am Iron Man, because while that is a really bold, creative decision to make, you then turn the lens on, okay, so what happens after he says that? And you have this like super cocky Tony Stark, who is a public celebrity. He loves being a superhero. The courtroom scene and all of that, but they introduce this theme of, you know, knockoffs of his tech, and you see people around the world trying and failing to make Iron Man suits, including Justin Hammer. And you also have how easily Whiplash gets to him in Monaco. Like, he is a very public figure, which makes him very easy to get at. And how vulnerable he is outside of that suit. Like, before he can put it on in the Monaco scene, like, he is full on probably about to die. I do like that idea that they don't just forget about the fact that he said I am Iron Man. And they'll do it again in Iron Man 3, arguably better. But I do like that is one of the beats that this film plays off, that it deals with his decision of publicly admitting that he is. And, you know, if he doesn't do that, Ivan Vanko stays in his cell wherever he is, because he's sitting there watching Tony say this on the news, and that motivates him to do everything he does. Yeah,
I mean, well, the whole reason he gets out there is because he sees Tony with the arc reactor on there, but would people be reporting on the arc reactor in Russia if he hadn't said, I am Iron Man?
Yeah.
Like...
I think it also, the other big thing for this for me is that this film, I mean, Tony says it's about legacy with his expo and everything, and, you know, I think Shane Black suggested that they should play Tony like Oppenheimer, who felt so guilty after inventing the atomic bomb. And, you know, Tony's legacy up until now has been as an arms dealer, and Vanko even like calls him on it and says, you know, just like every rich man or whatever, you're essentially trying to buy your way to a better reputation. And that pairs very well with his palladium poisoning and everything, and his own sort of sense of mortality. Like, he can invent all this stuff, but he's dying from it. He has this perfect life, but, you know, he doesn't really have friends. And the scene where, like, he's got his shit together finally, but, like, Pepper's mad at him. Happy's now working for Pepper. Black Widow, who was previously, like, flirting with, is now sort of, like, paying more attention to Pepper and Happy. And you can see he feels very alone. And it furthermore ties into, like, you know, Vanko comes for him because of that, and it's like the sins of the father. Like, when we talk about the legacy, it's the legacy that Howard left to him, where, you know, Vanko feels that his father wasn't credited with all this stuff and was screwed out of this, that, and the other. And I like both of those things, to be honest. It's just, there's just so much going on. And I feel there's so much in service of, like, the ongoing MCU that they don't have enough time to play with these two ideas of reacting to Iron Man and developing the legacy thing.
They feel like, they're two elements that the MCU does come back to in regards to Tony, because they're things that they touch on in Iron Man 3, they're things they touch on in Captain America Civil War, is this idea of Tony's relationship with his father and Tony's relationship with his creations and stuff like that. In fact, I mean, Age of Ultron very much deals with that kind of idea of...
literally.
Like, so they're obviously these are very rich thematic ideas, but yeah, as you say, like, putting both of them in this movie and then also setting up kind of like the MCU and laying the groundwork for it, it becomes a very busy movie that doesn't really know where to put its focus.
And also that this legacy thing and this all of that it leads to a lengthy scene where he's inventing an element. I mean, on the one hand, that is a very comic book ass thing. Like, I fully could imagine reading that happening. That, like, Batman or Tony Stark or whoever has invented a new thing, and it's like, alright, whatever. It's just seeing it played out in a film is a bit much. And, like, his father, like, hiding it in the model of the Stark Expo is super corny.
It's weird, because it's like, you have so much fun watching him build the suit in Iron Man 1.
And it feels like that's what they were going for, and it's just not the same.
Yeah, but I think it's because, like, in that, there are very real life and death stakes. You've got 24 hours to build a rocket, or a missile, or whatever, or we're going to kill you, essentially. Whereas this is, we know Tony's dying of poisoning, but there's not really, like, definitive, like, you will be dead at this point.
Yeah. We don't know, like, if he can get to 100, if he dies at 60, like, you know.
Yeah.
The percentage, in his blood, yeah.
Again, like, it feels like they're trying to build up the stakes in a different way, but
yeah, it's weird. I feel this is both slave to the first one and slave to the future, and it doesn't concentrate enough on the present for Tony's story, because there are nuggets of good ideas here. I hate when people just dismiss this one fully. They're just like, "Oh, Iron Man 2's garbage."
I don't think it's garbage at all, but I do think there is too much going on, and there's like, when I think of it, I don't necessarily think of individual scenes. I think of characters, and I think of those little moments. It's stuff like the bit where he gets the briefcase and, like, gets into the suit like that, and that
felt like such a nod to the cartoon. Like, that's what I remember from watching that cartoon. All the, like, fun ways he could get into the suit.
Yeah, but I mean, probably again, the scene I enjoy watching the most is that courtroom scene, and that's just the characters talking to each other. And
Alright, well, speaking of the characters, I mean, I think we've kind of covered Tony. Robert Downey Jr. continues to be good at being a cocky rich prick who's good at everything. Gwyneth Paltrow is back as Pepper Potts. She is promoted to CEO very early in the film, because Tony, like, is just obsessed with being Iron Man, doesn't give a shit about his company. He says, well, you basically run it anyway. I wish there was more of her in this. I feel that she is... I don't know, I think we covered it and we said we wish there was more of her in the first one, but I feel there is more of her in the first one than this one. She kind of just vanishes for the middle portion of the film. I like the scene she's in, it's just, it feels like they lost some momentum by leaving her out for so long.
Yeah, like, and just that kind of way that she's brought back into the movie in the final act, kind of as the damsel in distress.
Yeah. And, like, they go further with the love story, like... He promotes her, and it's sort of... I don't know, it's sort of half a compliment and half a almost dismissal. It's like, yeah, go be CEO. Bye. And then, you know, the jealousy with Black Widow a little bit, and... You know, when he's suffering from the poisoning and he, like, asks her to go away with him and he doesn't want to go home and stuff like that. All things that if they'd let breathe and, like, played on more, very good narratively. But
it feels like they went, well, Stain is dead.
Yeah.
Can't have Tony running a company because that's boring. So I guess that's what Pepper's doing. We need someone to do this thing because obviously the company's a big part of it, and we're doubling down on kind of like the expo and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But we can't have our genius character being the CEO because watching him work an office job isn't going to be exciting at all.
Just several scenes of him doing tax returns and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, like you get the feeling that Tony never would have done that. So, like, this is a move that's very much in line with what Tony would do.
Yeah.
But because he gives her the CEO position, and because he's never going to spend any time in the office, you kind of force them away from each other. Because unless Pepper's going to run Stark Industries from his living room, like what reason do they ever have to, like, interact apart from when she's kind of reacting to stuff he's doing on that mass public level? Which is why she's only really in, like, the Monaco scene. It's why she's only really in the scene at the Stark Expo. It's why she's only really in the scene where he actually goes to visit Stark Industries, and then she disappears for the rest of the movie.
And of course, he gets drunk and sleazes all over her and tries to kiss her, and I think he even says, "I love you."
Yes.
While very drunk. And of course, it all comes full circle at the end, and they kiss, and they're in a relationship. And I feel like they've been together for like a day, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm in a semi-stable relationship." I do like this scene where they bicker about him not revealing he was dying to her, though. When it's like he's dealing with very serious stuff, and we just get this extended argument between them while Black Widow's like, guys?
Yeah, I mean, but that's again, like, they do have chemistry, and that's part of the reason why you want to see more of Gwyneth Paltrow, which is something I don't think I would say normally, but I do want to see more of Gwyneth Paltrow in these movies, because she does have that chemistry with Rob.
She plays it well. She grounds it, and she gives it some gravitas, and I don't know. Yeah, she's good. She's one of the better just human characters.
Yes, I mean probably still the best love interest in the MCU. I can't think of anyone.
Well, we'll find out as we go, won't we?
We will.
Maybe we'll add this.
We're not ranking love interests.
Well, she's better than Betty Roth. Right, so Don Cheadle replaces Terrence Howard as Rhodey, War Machine. So Terrence Howard, as Ben pointed out, was making the most money out of Iron Man 1. They had him on a 3-picture deal. They apparently wanted to pay him significantly less money. He claims, in a not-so-subtle way, that Robert Downey Jr. took some of his salary for Iron Man 2. He made many comments about, I guess, contracts aren't worth what they're printed on. Maybe his maths was off, I don't know. And then,
he is a man who thinks 1 times 1 is 1, or yes. 1 times 1 is 2.
Yes, you almost sounded very stupid just then. He apparently only had a few hours to accept or pass, and he never got to read a script, so good on him for this working out. I think he has very good chemistry with Robert Downey Jr. He is obviously a very sort of, he's a calmer person. I never really buy him as a military man in the same way I did Terrence Howard. Even though he's been in so many films now as War Machine, it's just there's just something about it where I'm I don't know, I can't see Don Cheadle as War Machine, but
I think he's definitely kind of more right for kind of the Shane Black version of Iron Man, and that kind of banter stuff. But then when he is I couldn't see him in Iron Man 1.
No.
And because this movie kind of exists in that kind of weird crossroads where they're kind of transitioning between those two styles, he's kind of stuck in the middle.
Yeah.
And he's good at the kind of banter stuff, but he's still, in this movie more than anything, he is the military man.
Yeah. Because it just doesn't play to his strength, I don't think.
Yeah, because he has to he commandeers the War Machine costume and flies it off.
Pimp it out. So, he flies it when ostensibly it's the first time he's ever been in it. And then Black Widow raises this question about authorization, how the suit would only work for authorized people. Is the implication here that... Because I think there is a throwaway line in Iron Man 1 about how... When Tony's approaching Rhodey and he's not now, I maybe read it as Tony was always building it for Rhodey and then decided, fuck it, I'll wear it again. So maybe he all along built it with Rhodey authorized to wear it. So maybe Rhodey has worn it before, I don't know, but...
I 100% think that he has worn it with Rhodey in mind. I do not think that he has worn it before. I do think this is the first time he's worn it, but I do think this is it is built with him in mind.
Because he just sort of doesn't respond to Widow's thing. He just sort of gives this look and mopes.
Yeah, but again, you get that kind of next time nods and stuff like that. Because Tony obviously does imply in the first movie that you can get in this. So if he has got that stuff involved, then...
I do like that he is more bullets and missiles compared to Tony's lasers and gadgets. It makes it so he's not just another Iron Man suit. And
this is still the suit though that kind of froze up in Iron Man 1, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is a lesser version of the suit that he's wearing.
Maybe Tony retroactively gave it the tech of.
I mean, possibly, but he steals the Mark II is what the kind of implication is.
Well, Rhodey's probably not going to go trying to fly up into the atmosphere just for lols.
This is true, but it's one of those things because obviously at this point we're on the Mark V armor.
Yeah, I think the Mark V is the briefcase. Mark IV is what he wears at the party, and I guess what he jumps out of the plane in at the beginning. I don't know.
Yeah, I think they redesign it in between 1 and 2.
I don't know what the Mark III is or if it even exists.
The Mark III is the costume from the end of Iron Man 1.
Oh, of course. Sorry, the Mark II is what Rhodey goes off with.
Yes. Right. Yeah, the Mark II is the silver one. The Mark III is the one that's been coloured red and gold, and then the Mark IV is, I think they give it the triangle, don't they?
Yeah. Okay, and also I do like, it's a very small touch in the middle of a not very good series of scenes, but I do like that Rhodey gets to briefly show off that, he's got this tactical mind when they're coordinating the attack at the end. When they're waiting for all the drones to come, he's like, right, I'm going to go up here, you're going to go here, and it's okay, that is a nice nod to why he would be good at this, even though Tony's got more experience using the suit. But
yes.
Anyway, Don Cheadle's here. He's here to stay. he will be in many more films.
He will be better in future movies.
He will.
He will also have a lot to do in future movies, or a lot less to do in future movies.
Yeah, a weird dynamic there. I have mentioned multiple times Black Widow, who I didn't mention in the synopsis because who has the time? Scarlett Johansson debuts as Natasha Romanoff, aka Natalie Rushman, aka the Black Widow. I guess I should have swapped those first two round. S.H.I.E.L.D. have placed her within the Stark organisation to monitor Tony's actions, etc., and she is basically performing an evaluation of Tony and his readiness for the Avengers program. I actually think this is one of the better pieces of casting Marvel have done, and it doesn't get talked about much. You know, people wax lyrical about RDJ, etc., but I think she's a really good Black Widow, and I cannot imagine anyone else in the role. Emily Blunt turned it down because of Gulliver's Travels. But yeah, this is her debut. She weirdly enough does like as much fighting and like kick-assery as she does in Avengers or any other film. I think like Jon Favreau like really went for it. It's like, oh, you want to introduce Black Widow? Here's Black Widow.
But the thing is, this might be my least favourite performance of hers as Black Widow.
Yeah, I mean, she was getting to grips with it.
Yeah, but it's just one of those things where like physically she has the role down.
Yeah,
obviously, but like.
Well, she spends most of the film undercover, to be fair.
She does, and I guess, and like it's a nice little payoff when she does get to go full Black Widow in the jumpsuit, and she's taking down like tens of bad guys, and you've got Happy Hogan kind of like struggling to take down his one.
I love that. He's having what he thinks is the most epic movie fight scene against the ultimate antagonist, and in the background she's taken out 10 dudes.
Which, I mean, is fun, but like also adds just to how busy this movie is, that it has to somehow pay off the fact that you've introduced Natasha Romanoff, and I think future movies do better jobs at introducing characters before they get their own like starring role.
Well, I mean, you compare this with, you know, Jeremy Renner in Thor, who isn't even credited and has like a 1-minute scene.
We'll discuss that more next time. Okay, but we may have differing opinions on that one.
They also felt the need to put in not one but two unnecessary scenes where she's in her underwear. But hey, you know, Hollywood and attractive women. I don't know. It's fun if you know who she is when you're watching it and she's being the secretary. Or the assistant or whatever. She will do better things. But yeah, the debut of the Black Widow as part of their initiative to introduce a whole bunch of extra characters in one movie. I was going to talk about Jon Favreau as Happy, but we've basically said the only thing I really want to say. You know, like, he's doing more things. He's a good comedic actor.
He obviously like wanted to give himself more to do this time.
There's probably like less pressure to like make the movie up as he goes on, so he has time to be in it.
Yeah, he can move scenes around so he gets to be in the Monaco scene, driving the car and actually reacting to stuff and all the rest of it. Yeah. But yeah, he gets more to do. He is fine. Yeah. Iron Man 3 is the more interesting way to talk about his role in it.
Yeah. Paired with Black Widow, we have Samuel L. Jackson back as Nick Fury. Again, tough salary negotiations. He apparently said publicly, I don't know if I will be Nick Fury, after he'd already filmed that cameo for Iron Man 1. But they got him on board. Some of his lines are not good in this movie, and he doesn't do a huge amount with them either. But he is always going to be Samuel L. Jackson. He is aloof, he is commanding, he's mysterious, all that. It kind of starts a tradition of ignoring big revelations from previous films wherein these two sort of act as if they've never met. I don't know if this was because, you know, audiences at this time wouldn't have been trained to stay till the end of a movie's credits to see a scene. So maybe this is the first time people have seen Nick Fury in these movies.
It's one of those things where like you can't rely on the fact that people like you can't rely on the fact that everyone's seen the first movie, so you can't. This is why they play the final scene from Iron Man 1 at the start of this one, is because this movie was going to do better.
Yes.
And even then, like I still sit in cinemas now watching these movies, and people will still walk out before the first scene.
And you just tart under your breath, don't you?
I mean, they have moved away from having like significant teases for the next movie in the previous movie now, and now they're kind of more comedy stingers. But even so, like, people will leave when the directed by card comes up.
Yeah.
Just like, oh, look, don't go. There is going to be stuff in like 2 minutes that you can watch that will be important to future enjoyment.
Yeah, Nick Fury's here. S.H.I.E.L.D. exists. Very front and centre after teasing them in the first one. Clark Gregor's back as Phil Coulson. He was a little bit shaky in his first outing, in a way I forgot. He is still a tiny bit here, but he is settling into it more. I like when he threatens to tase Tony and then watch... I can't remember what he said. He was going to watch The Bachelor or something like that.
some reality show.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think this is where you start to see, like, this. I think I paid attention to him more in this one.
Yeah.
Like, I forgot, when I got to Iron Man 2, I forgot that he was in Iron Man 1. But by the end of this one, I kind of felt he was part of the ensemble.
Yeah.
Which is what you need, especially because he does get the big moment in the post-credit scene as well. Like, he is... You see him as, like, even more so than Samuel L. Jackson, who signed this 9-picture deal. Like, Clark Gregg is the guy that holds Phase 1 together.
It's the Claire Temple. I always liked that he was sort of this unassuming-looking man with a sort of dry smile and all this confidence, who had this level of importance that you didn't quite understand. I thought that was always good. John Slattery is not as good as Dominic Cooper as Howard Stark.
Yeah, I think
he's a better fit for, like, a distant dad, which is the element they play on.
I love John Slattery to pieces.
Of course. Like,
he is forever and ever Roger Sterling from Mad Men. He is absolutely superb, and this is... When I heard this casting, that John Slattery would be playing Tony Stark's dad in flashback scenes to the 60s or 70s or whatever it is that these scenes are supposed to be taking place, like, this is genius casting. I want full-on Roger Sterling with the tumbler full of bourbon or whatever, being his dad and stuff like that. And then you kind of get 2 or 3 scenes with him where you don't really get the sense of kind of like that Stark charisma to bleed through. Like, he's kind of positioned as kind of like the Walt Disney figure. Which doesn't feel right to be Tony's dad. Like, you want that kind of more madcap insanity going on. And Dominic Cooper brings that, and Dominic Cooper's obviously had a hell of a lot more time in the role, because in fact he's on 2 seasons of Agent Carter as well. But this feels like such a wasted opportunity to kind of like be able to tell that these 2 people are related. Instead, it's kind of he's there to get his scenes done, and then he's kind of through with the movie.
Did they bring him back for Civil War? I feel they did.
Oh yeah. John Slattery was back for Civil War.
Fair enough. Paul Bettany is still Jarvis. Nothing remarkable this time. We'll talk about him in the future. We've got cameos from Leslie Bibb back as Christine Everhart. Olivia Munn is a reporter with a ridiculous name I can't remember.
Chess Roberts.
Kate Mara, of all people, plays a US Marshal that I fucks the shit out of Tony while serving him a subpoena, I think. Stan Lee plays himself / Larry King. Elon Musk and Bill O'Reilly are in it. And Max Favreau plays Peter Parker, retroactively. At the time, Jon Favreau shoved his son in an Iron Man mask and put him in the movie. They, a decade later, almost decided, hey, that's Peter Parker. So, forever and ever, Max Favreau has played Spider-Man.
I didn't actually realise it was his son. That was a revelation to me.
Oh, okay. There you go. Yeah, Max Favreau. Right, it's time for Villain Watch. We like to keep track because every time a Marvel movie comes out, I feel someone goes, all Marvel movie villains suck. So we are trying to like scientifically prove if that's true or not. And, well...
2 for 2 so far.
Yes.
Bad.
We have quite a little gamut here. We have Mickey Rourke as Ivan Vanko. I do not buy for one single second that he is a genius. He admitted that the hardest part about this was pretending he knew shit about computers when typing.
Oh, that's the best scene. It's Mickey Rourke typing
furiously. He's a good physical presence. Like, I like the look with the tattoos and the hair and all that. And I don't know, it's just the whole thing is a giant like missed opportunity to me because
you have no idea how excited I was for Mickey Rourke to be cast in this movie. We were coming out of when I was watching these movies, I wasn't like the biggest film person in the world, so like I hadn't seen a lot of kind of Mickey Rourke's famous kind of late 80s stuff.
And then you saw The Wrestler.
Well, yeah, I was going to say Sin City is kind of where I knew him from, and obviously, and Sin City, obviously he's great in Sin City. But The Wrestler is my favourite movie of the year it came out. He is phenomenal in that movie.
Sure is.
He is so damn good. Mm-hmm. And I think he gets cast in this movie literally off the back of that. Like, I think he goes from filming The Wrestler to filming Iron Man 2. Yeah. And, like, obviously this is Mickey Rourke's big return. He's nominated for an Oscar for his role in The Wrestler and all. And so you're just like, wow, he's going to be... Something must have attracted him to this role in Iron Man 2. That he's going to bring something to it. He's going to bring that physicality. He's going to bring just something to it. And then the movie comes out and he's doing a terrible fake Russian accent. And he's like a proto version of Jared Leto's Joker.
Yeah. They even give him that Joker-y scene where, like, he's in the cell and then the next time you see him, the guards are hanging from the ceiling and he's sitting there with a, like, crazy phone he's made. And then he's just gone. He's just controlling the drones and then he shows up in a knockoff Ironmonger suit and he dies, like, almost immediately. Like, so pithy. Like, it's such a missed opportunity because, like, this idea of, like, you know, him holding Tony accountable for the things that his father did and holding him accountable for his own legacy, like, that is in theory a good idea. And I like the scene when he's just been arrested and, like, they have their interaction in the prison. I think that's one of the better scenes for Mickey Rourke in this film. It's just, he amounts to very little. And, like, Whiplash is one of the more famous Iron Man villains, but, I mean, Iron Man villains aren't generally all that good, because most Iron Man villains are another Iron Man.
He is two Iron Man villains as well.
Yes.
Like, they combined Whiplash and Crimson Dynamo, so you kind of get the feeling that, like, they're really reaching for something with this character. They kind of, like, build someone who is not just a one-dimensional bad guy.
Yeah. Doing anything they can to not do the Mandarin.
Yeah, and so their solution to make him not one-dimensional is to give him a cockatoo?
Bird. My bird.
I like Mickey Rourke in the physicality. Like, I like the kind of breakout scene from the prison where he, like, smashes the guy's head into the toilet and like use the plastic explosive behind him and stuff like that. That is all very
he,
nice.
Like, sees the guys wearing the same prison number as him and he's like, oh.
Yeah, so, like, it's physically it's very good, and also I like when he's, like, dismantling the Iron Man costume that Hammer's made him build and stuff like that. The physicality of it is all very good. It's just when he talks or when he is supposed to be the arch villain of it, you just kind of go like, I don't buy this at all.
He should have been more Whiplash and less Crimson Dynamo, in my opinion. Like, more just physical villain and less, like, you know, rival genius or whatever. Because you know what? They cast a rival genius and they did it amazingly. Sam Rockwell is Justin Hammer. My God.
have I made my ludicrous claim to you?
No.
Sam Rockwell makes every movie 1 star better.
Sure, I'll go with that. Sam Rockwell's amazing. How is Sam Rockwell not in more things? Obviously, he's got a hell of a lot of, like, good movies to his name, but I just feel like, why isn't he just getting offer after offer after offer? Charismatic as all hell in this film. A wonderful sort of foil for, he's not quite the straight man, but sort of the lamer Tony Stark, like the dude dressing as Tony, trying to live his life.
He is carrying an awful lot of the comic weight of this movie.
Yeah. I love that he calls Tony Anthony, and, like, he's so corny. He's like, God bless Iron Man, God bless America. I love his reading of, I'd like to point out that test subject survived, and, like, it's just great. And, like, the open disdain those two have of each other, and when he comes out dancing at the expo, and just my heart flutters. He would reprise this role in, what is it, Hail the King? Or
Hail to the King. Yeah.
They haven't started doing the one-shots yet, have they?
No.
Is the first one with Thor, or is it with Captain?
Well, they've got a funny thing happened on the way to New Mexico. I think it's the first one.
Yeah, and I think that's on the disc for Captain America, and then, like, item 37 or something is with Avengers.
That's on the Avengers. The Consultant is the first one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, The Consultant is the first one, which is on the disc for Thor. A funny thing happened on the way to Thor's hammer is on Captain America. Then you got Item 47, then you got Agent Carter, and then you got All Hail the King.
Fair enough. They should get back to making those. They were fun. Sam Rockwell's amazing.
Sam Rockwell is almost the entire reason to watch this movie.
Yeah. I will never, ever allow this to be fully trashed, if for no other reason than Sam Rockwell demands to be watched in this movie.
Like,
I'm stunned they haven't brought him back, like, full scale in a movie.
Sam Rockwell takes this movie from a 2.5-star movie to a 3.5-star movie through sheer will.
Fuck yeah. Gary Shandling as a senator, he's funny. Of course he is. He's Gary Shandling. Included him in Villains because he is antagonistic to Tony.
His better role is in a feature movie.
True.
The greatest cameo.
Yes. Alright, so the point of Villain Watch is to attempt to rank all these villains as we go. Maybe end up with a top 10 list. Maybe we'll have every single villain. I think so far we have it going like Stain, Abomination.
I mean, we'll split them up. So it's Stain,
Human Blonsky, Thunderbolt Ross, Raza, Abomination.
Yes.
Okay, Justin Hammer is number 1.
Just like no question, like Justin Hammer is number one.
Yeah. Whiplash, better or worse than Stain?
Worse than Stain.
Worse than Stain. Better or worse than Human Blonsky?
Because Stain has that personal history.
Also, he's Jeff fucking Bridges. He can't be that bad. Worse than Human Blonsky. Okay.
Worse than Human... Because Human Blonsky's got that kind of, like, insane look in his eyes.
Absolutely.
And also he gets kicked into a tree.
Legendary. The stuff of movie legend. Whiplash, better or worse than Thunderbolt Ross?
Better.
Yeah, I'm with you. So that's our ranking. Are we going to call Gary Shandling a villain in Marvel history? No. All right, I just thought I'd throw.
I mean, he's a Nazi, but he's not a villain. I mean, no, he is a villain because he's a Nazi. But at this point, we don't know he's a Nazi.
That's true. All right, well there you have it. Marvel villains thus far. I think we actually have a good one. It's not just that we're struggling to rank the bad ones. We have our first officially good Marvel villain, I would say.
We have our first officially good Marvel villain who should have been the lead villain in this movie.
Yeah. He was almost cast as Tony Stark in Iron Man 1.
But we would have had so much Sam Rockwell then.
I know. He's great. He's great. There is a YouTube video where someone just cut together his dance scene and like put it on loop and put it to different music, and it's great. You should watch it for 4 hours.
So I haven't seen 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri yet, but I almost entirely want to just because he is in this movie.
Okay. Mike recommended that film, I think.
I've heard problematic things from some people, but like I love In Bruges enough that I will go see it.
Fair enough. Speaking of Sam Rockwell, let's do outstanding performance nominees. He is mine. I'm not going to put forward Robert Downey Jr. for this one. If you would like to, you can.
No, it's Sam Rockwell.
It's Sam Rockwell, and we still have one in the bank from Incredible Hulk. Unless you think there's anyone in this movie that deserves one as well. I don't think there is. I think we're still sitting on this spare one. And I think we're going to need it when we come to the Avengers.
I think I know who I'd want to give it to in Avengers. Yeah.
Okay. Well, all right. So far, the pantheon of great Marvel performances, it's Robert Downey Jr. in Iron Man 1, and it's Sam Rockwell in Iron Man 2.
Sam Rockwell. Why is Sam Rockwell not back?
I know. Why isn't he like a full-on like villain in an Avengers or something?
Why haven't they Loki'd him?
Yeah. Why isn't there like a coalition of villains and like Sam Rockwell is funding them and giving them all their tech? Why not? Like, Hammer Tech is mentioned in Luke Cage, I believe.
Let's not talk about that.
Okay. Right, and finally, our final like little regular segment. Good third act, bad third act. Most superhero movies have 2 good first acts and a bad third act. Marvel are guilty of it. So far, I think Iron Man 1, we agreed. Bad third act. Incredible Hulk. Very bad third act. How is Iron Man 2's third act, would you say? If we're saying purely good or bad?
I think this is the first time where the third act is a step up from the second act.
I still think it's a bad third act, but I think it's a less dramatic drop-off, and as you said, it's almost actually an elevation.
Yeah, because you come out of the element stuff, and you get a lot of payoff to the stuff. Like, a lot of the stuff I think about of this movie is the Black Widow scene where she's, like, fighting the 10 dudes, and... Like, I enjoy stuff like the joke about the weapon that Rhodey's got from Hammer, like, completely backfiring. Like, I think the final fight between Tony, Rhodey, and Vanko is bad.
Yeah, it's not even a fight. Like, he shows up, holds them both, and then they kill him.
Yeah, it's dull because it's just another man in a suit.
Yeah, exactly. That is my biggest problem with Iron Man, is that it always boils down to another Iron Man. And that, in theory, is a very narratively good idea, in that, like, he is held accountable for what he has created. It's just watching it in a film is not interesting. Yeah, they will change that formula in Iron Man 3, which we'll talk about in several episodes' time.
But it's part of that kind of, like, whole holding up a mirror to the villain type thing that you can more interestingly do with something like The Dark Knight, where the Joker is like
he's a critique of Batman.
Yeah, a critique of Batman, and also like a kind of mirror... disturbed image, like a funhouse mirror version of Batman.
Anyone
kind of.
Could have a bad day. Yes,
whereas this is literally a mirror. Like, this is a suit that Tony designed.
Yeah,
but evil.
Yes,
and it's just so much less interesting. Like, there's no, like, there could be interesting things going on here. You could do Tony as being the rich billionaire, and then his dad kind of like taking money away from this other person. You get a critique of like the 1% versus almost like the Walt Disney critique, which would have been complicated, but the idea of like Walt Disney copywriting things and presenting other people using intellectual property and all kinds of complicated things, but instead the movie just kind of distilled to Tony is a fundamentally good guy, despite the fact he's benefiting from this because of capitalism and because of
Yeah.
his father's ways, and so because he is villainous, he must die. There is no moral greyness to what Mickey Rourke's Ivan Vanko is doing. Like, in fact, at the end, they kind of come around and say, no, Vanko didn't help that much with this.
Yeah.
It was all Howard.
Howard got him deported is still a very villainous sentence, though. Was he just... Oh, never mind. Yeah, that's Iron Man 2. That's its legacy. It is ranked very low on most people's lists. I don't know if I'm quite willing to put it right near the bottom. I think it's better than Incredible Hulk. It was... I don't know. It tried more than Iron Man 1, but it also... That resulted in a less fun movie, so...
It's number 2 right now.
Yes.
Number
Okay,
3.
sure. Iron Man 2, Incredible Hulk. I'd go with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, that's been episode 3. We will be talking about Thor next week. Oh, God, his eyebrows, man. They haunt me, what his eyebrows look like in this film. It's a very weird critique, but I think when you watch it again, you'll be right there with me. The debut, essentially, of Chris Hemsworth in the existence of the world. He was born onto the screen as Thor.
You are forgetting performance as the father of one Tiberius Kirk in Star Trek.
Of course! Wait, is that pre-Thor?
Yeah, that's 2009.
Oh, man.
This was pre-Iron Man 2.
Wow. That's weird, because I feel I knew who he was, and I saw that film in the cinema, so where would I know him from? Anyway, we're going to be talking about Thor next week, so this has been a good podcast. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you. And we'll see you next time. Bye.